Hello, I'm Alan Davies, and welcome to As Yet Untitled. Now, tonight I will have 4 guests with no preparation, no script, no rehearsal, no clue, actually, what they're about to talk about. And by the end of the evening's conversation, we will hopefully have come up with an appropriate mantle for the show, which will become the show's title. So, without further ado, please welcome our guests. It's so nice to see you all. First of all, I have a former podium dancer and oil rig worker, Marcus Brigstocke. See you with us. I have a man who once got so nervous on stage that one of his balls retracted into his body. John Robbins is here with us. I have a woman who was once stalked by an inflatophiliac.
Yes.
Katherine Ryan is with us. And lastly, I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled to have with us a man who has an unusually, uniquely high arse. Bob Mortimer. Where to begin, really, from this smorgasbord of odd anecdotes? I cannot believe, for a start, that you were a podium dancer at any point in your life. I know.
How dare you? Because when you said podium dancer and oil rig worker,
yeah,
it's important to say. Like, I didn't dance on an oil rig. They don't have those.
Well, you were in an oil rig worker's outfit at any point on the podium. What was your outfit?
I wish I... It was the early 90s, and it was sort of quite high-waisted black, quite voluminous trousers, and then often a waistcoat with nothing underneath, and basically Aladdin. Yeah. Aladdin was roughly it. So nothing, you know, like I wasn't naked or anything.
Was the intent sexual?
Whose? I worked at Ministry of Sound, Equinox, Limelight, and Hammersmith Ballet, and it was just like...
These are all... Catherine's from Canada, by the way, and these are all discos.
Yeah.
These are all discos. They are discos. They're all discos. You know the standard, with a lit-up floor, and they had music playing often, and I just used to get up on a podium.
Was the idea
dance.
that you would attract people towards you, or was the idea to repel them to the bar?
That was to drive people
to the bar.
Yeah. Cool, I'm not going to say that. I need a drink. Do you want a drink? The idea was to excite the crowd, so maybe it was partly sexual.
Were you buff? Were you down the gym? Were you fit as a fiddle?
I wasn't sort of cut, you know, but I was what I'd call dance fit, Alan. I was lithe.
Yeah. Were you scouted for any other dance work, perhaps as a video?
Video?
Yeah, it's these lovely ladies who dance in the background, and mostly underneath, rappers.
I've seen them.
Yeah, you were never spotted.
No, although I did dance on TV in Canada.
We have TV in Canada?
Yeah.
What did you dance on? Was it Electric Circus?
Yes, it was. That's exactly what it's called.
Up. You were there. I don't believe it.
That's exactly what it's called. I was not going to remember that.
I was a dancer on Electric Circus.
Come on.
Yes.
Wow. The rest of you, go away. This is... No, all of you.
Okay.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And
wow.
Okay, Electric Circus. What year? Because it probably...
Yeah, like really early 90s, 92.
No, that would have been very illegal if I'd been there.
Okay, all right. No, I spent a summer in Canada and obviously ran out of things to do very quickly.
Not being of the hunting, fishing type.
Yeah, no, not so much. And, and so I went down to Electric Circus.
Where was this? What town was this?
Okay, Electric Circus, it's in Toronto. And there was not MTV in Canada for a while. We had something called Much Music. There is MTV there now. We've just caught up. But Much Music is great. It's real Canadian content, like Canadian-funded music
A lot
station.
of Corey Hart.
A lot of Corey Hart. And there's a...
This is now just a totally different language.
There's a Friday night channel or program on the network called Electric Circus, and it's just dancing in a room. And if you're very good, you get a podium. And if you're not so good, you just dance around the podium on the floor.
You get a bucket.
And I hate to tell you, but there was not a lot of pornography then. So it's the show that young men would watch late at night and go,
Hitman and Her. Do you remember the Hitman and Her?
I do remember Hitman.
Michaela
Michaela
Strachan. Pete Waterman.
Mainly Michaela Strachan.
Yeah.
In terms of a porn substitute,
Oh, yeah,
Pete
yeah,
Waterman's
sure.
not cutting it.
But Pete was always there looking through a crack in the curtain, wasn't he? What was your dance style, Marcus? Was it urgent?
It was very urgent. It was very urgent. And it was very big. It was very expansive.
A lot of arms?
It involved a lot of arms.
Did you ever try out jokes in between kind of going, this rhythm is a dancer coming at you? Now, you know the thing about the tube is...
Yeah, no, it was all...
Was there a crossover between your dance life and your stand-up
No,
comedy
no,
life?
it was all pre-stand-up. At that time, I was like madly into comedy. This could turn the conversation awkward, but mostly into you and Vic. I was mad keen on the two of you, obsessed, and actually...
You put that in the past tense.
Yeah.
It's a working comic.
Yeah. Are you still... Oh, that is absolutely wonderful. Never mind all the dancing.
It's youngsters like you that remember us, that keep us going.
Well, that's right. That's great. That's great. Where? What sort of stuff?
I should say as well, I should declare a love for Bob's work at this point, and current work too. But I remember going down to, and brace yourselves, young people, but going back to the 80s, to the Greyhound in Sydenham.
Wow.
And Vic was on stage, and you were in the corner of a table with some other people, giggling constantly, and then Vic would join you between acts or at the interval or whatever, and bits of paper would be passed around, and then he'd go back on. Anyway, I went back 6 months later, and you were on stage, and Vic was singing a lot, and then he'd fall down, and he'd say, "Bob, I've fallen," and you'd say, "Are you all right, Vic? Can you get up?" And
Yes,
I think so. And everyone was falling about, and I thought, what's going on? And then you did a quiz in which the prize was a 5-litre container that had some fluid in at some point, filled with potatoes with a biro sellotape to the side.
Yeah. Right, bad.
A good prize.
Yeah, that is a good decent prize.
I mean, if it was Potato Friday, especially.
Yeah.
And at some point, he turned to you and said, "What's the score?" And the whole pub, which was packed, said, "1-1."
Yes.
It's not 1-1. Why do they know that? And then he said, "What does that mean?" And they all went, "Tiebreaker." And I thought, at that point, I thought, these two are on to something.
We used to... It's nothing to be proud of, but we used to... If an act wasn't going down very well, we used to throw our shoes at them.
It's like an Iraqi thing, isn't it?
There's a few people I occasionally meet now who were on the circuit then that still remember being shooed at the Greyhound in Sydenham.
The rest of this episode will be on Dave On Demand if you missed it. And now for extra stories that didn't make the show.
I did a skiing show called The Jump, and
You were very good on that.
thank you very much. It was absolute heaven. Being taught to ski by world champions, I have no idea what it looked like on the telly, but I had a blast. But I was out there with Amy Childs from The Only Way is Essex, and I don't know for sure, but I think she's had bum implants. And a lot of the time, we'd fall, hard and fast.
Did it go?
Well, no, I was concerned that if she fell hard on her bum, that they'd shoot up her back. And one of us would have to tell her, like, "Amy, they've gone up. You've got matching front and back." And then I thought, well, I don't know whether I would say. I might leave that for a bit and just see how I felt about it.
Try and style it out.
Yeah.
Is it not like a space hopper?
No, like it, don't get me wrong. Amy Child's bottom looks really nice.
This is the dream, the
Yeah.
inflatophiliac,
He's
the
oh,
implant,
yeah.
combined into a spacey, hoppery arse.
That'd be good.
I had a brilliantly awkward moment on that. All of the spa facilities in Austria are all naked. And I thought, I'm not going to be comfortable with this, but at the same time, I'm here for a month doing this, so I'm just going to do it. And I'm just going to be naked and let that be okay. And then I found myself in a steam room with Anthea Turner. And naked. And you're all Blue Peter. Was she naked? We were both naked in the steam room together. And it was...
No towel?
No towel. It was a bit tense and, And by tense, I mean a bit awkward. There's a fly. There's a huge fly. A massive fly has arrived. That's weird, because that's what happened. So we were both in the steam room, and we slightly ran out of things to say, because when you're searching for something to say...
Nice funny.
No, I wasn't. I didn't know what to say. But I knew Anthea was really into, like, equestrian stuff. And in a silence, I went, still ride much? And then she went, no, not much. I just went, I think I'm going to go and go have a shower.
My parents are Irish Catholic, and I didn't know where babies came from for a very long time. And I remember the first time I saw a penis, it was just my neighbor boy, I don't know why he was naked, probably some kind of comedy dare. And I remember looking at it, and I genuinely believed that storks brought babies, because I asked my dad, well, the stork, he brings them. And then I was like, well, the stork, you see, is like when a man and a woman are married, and then he brings them a baby. And my dad has kind of a Canadian-Irish accent. That is how my dad talks. I do his accent perfectly. It's just a really shit Irish accent. And then I said, well, my friend doesn't have a dad. She just lives with her mom. So what happened? Well, the stork was just lost, and so he just dropped the baby off. He really stayed with this stork story. And then when I saw this penis, I knew there was something with penises. I had a feeling. And then I thought it looked like a stork's beak holding two babies.
Oh, wow.
Like to balance them out so he wouldn't fly crooked. And I thought that in your balls, I know that there are babies in there now, figuratively speaking, but back then I thought that they were two very tiny, like doll-sized babies.
So how did you think they came
For
out?
ages. I hadn't gotten to that, but I just thought somehow the penis perhaps grew into a stork and the babies grew as well.
Can do.
They're very mythical creatures.
I think I would have thought that they dropped the baby.
Yeah.
And it had landed on a mushroom.
Oh.
Can you find out, from the QI lot, whether a stork, I mean, maybe you know already, can a stork support the weight of a human child? Can it carry that?
Oh, great question.
I would say almost certainly yes.
You reckon?
The storks are massive.
Sure.
And there's a town in northern Spain I went through. I used to have a motorbike, and I used to like riding it in Spain, because Spain's great.
Yeah.
And there's a town which I can't remember the name of in northern Spain, and there are storks everywhere, on most of the rooftops and on the church and everywhere. And the nests are really like the size of this table.
Yeah.
They're enormous. So I would think £6, £7, no problem.
Is a stork the same as a heron?
Similar.
Bigger. I don't reckon, because there's a lot of herons near where I live. I don't reckon. I've not tried it, but I don't think they could lift a human child.
The way to distinguish a heron from a stork is they have very different funerals. Just saying. No, that's the old wives' way of telling.
Yes.
Was it the making of you as a man?
No.
You had a bit of a troubled period, didn't you? Didn't you get chucked out of schools and things?
Yeah. This is all post rehab. All of this. Yeah.
How long were you in rehab for? You
don't
have to talk about this.
No, it's fine. I don't mind. I was in rehab. I went in. I was very young. I was 17 when I went into rehab, and I was in residential full time for like 4 months. And then in a halfway house for 7 months. Because in those days, there weren't loads of those people going into rehab, so insurance would pay for people to stay in long enough to actually get sober, rather than give drunk people somewhere to lie down for 4 weeks, which is roughly what happens now.
Was it primarily alcohol was your
No,
problem?
it wasn't. No, food. I was enormous. I was, when I was 17, I was about 24 stone. I was I was a lot shorter than I am now. I was 5'10", so I was almost entirely spherical. Your inflator guy would have loved me. Wow. And
I love that you're so posh. Your parents sent you to rehab for food before people were going for heroin.
Yeah. But that was a really strange thing, because my compulsive eating, as it turned out, was like nuts, but I didn't know how nuts it was. And then you end up,
Was it just nuts, or did you eat everything?
Incredible quantity.
My counsellor actually was a squirrel and just showed me other ways. Bury some,
Bury
move
some, keep some for later.
Am I remembering wrong, or in Beatrix Potter, did Squirrel Nutkin swim on his back to keep his nuts dry? Or if I remembered that. And that's my memory of it. So I went in, and you're in there and sharing meetings, counselling with heroin addicts and alcoholics and stuff. And I was trying to reconcile, an eating disorder with that. And so you'd hear these stories, people talking about stuff, and you'd hear someone go like, oh, yeah, my name's Jimmy, and I've been a heroin addict for, since I was 14. And when my friend died, that was when it changed for me, And
you're meant to keep these stories to yourself.
Yeah. It's all right. I won't give you his name. Frankie Boyle. And he'd do that, and then the next guy would say,
You'd go on and say, I like
I'm an
sandwiches.
alcoholic.
I really like
Exactly. He'd go, I'm an alcoholic, and I was driving and we crashed. And my wife, she was all right in the end, but she was really badly hurt. And then I'd sit there and go like, I like cake. Do you like cake? Anyone else? Cake?
It's very Moorish,
It's delicious. But I would, before that, I'd eat anything. It's terrible. I ate out of bins and all sorts. You're proper mad. And then I more than halved my body weight in 7 months. And that was how I started being a dancer, because I went from 24 stone to 11 stone in 7 months. And so I was suddenly my body was like this strange thing to me. I fell over all the time. Yeah, it was. I was forever falling over. My centre of gravity was all weird, and it had all changed. So I'd run up a flight of stairs, and also I think my body was used to sending a lot of blood to my legs to get me around. So I'd go up a flight of stairs, and then my body just goes, sorry, not enough head blood. I'd go over. But that whole thing...
Is that down to the rehab, you think, the weight loss?
Yeah, it was, totally. Yeah, absolutely. That all changed then.